Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Nick Saban Show, brought to you by Truck Works. I'm Chris Stewart, along with the head coach of the Crimson Tide, and we have done what we're supposed to do, Coach, and that's go with the mask. But since we are 6 feet, we'll go ahead and remove them and make it a little bit easier for everybody to hear us. But this is just a sample of what's an amazing, incredible time, Coach.
Well, and I think everybody should respect the things that we can do to keep each other safe. It's not only just about you, but it's also about the people around you, your family, the other people you could have an effect on. It's not just about playing football. I think it's just about health and safety of people in general.
Thankfully, there is a season on the horizon. Fall camp, albeit pushed back a little bit. Fall camp's underway. Talk about how you prepare for that and how your staff has adjusted in terms of what you're dealing with.
Well, a lot of things are very different in terms of timetable of how you do things. But really what we do is not really changed a lot. Same teaching progression, same install for players. I think it was really, really helpful where they gave us 2 weeks where we could have 6 hours on the field and 6 hours of meetings with the players. So we ended up having 10 practices for, an hour and 12 minutes or whatever. But the fact that we didn't have spring practice, the fact that the young players on the team, the mid-year guys and incoming freshmen, really had never gone through anything except Zooms,
right.
To learn. I think that was very, very helpful, to those players, and you can see some of the carryover now that we've started fall camp. But this is not like a normal fall camp. We're practicing really every other day because we really have a long time before we play a game. So we have 25 practices in something like 40 days. So you have to pick your spots as to when are you going to take these days off? And then when are you going to sort of transition into what the season's going to be like? So the first 2 weeks here, we've kind of taken the approach that we're going through spring practice. And in spring practice, we practice kind of every other day, which is really good for teaching because, you can practice today and then you can have a meeting tomorrow and watch the film, especially for young players. And then the next day you put an install in and practice again. So you don't have to commingle corrections and installs in the same meeting.
Let's talk about your team a little bit. And again, you got a long way to go before the opener as we sit here and visit right now. But it's nice to have some pieces to the puzzle, especially on the offensive side, that you're familiar with.
Well, and I think we do have a lot more experience returning on offense than, and I think that's a good thing. 4 out of 5 starters in the offensive line, several tight ends that have played a lot, 2 receivers who are really impact players, running back, 2 running backs that have played a lot of football around here. So there's a lot of experience returning. Mac got some experience last year, playing the last, 2 or 3 games of the season. So hopefully that will help his sort of development and maturity. And then it's the most important thing to me this year is because the circumstance that we're in is developing quality depth at every position. Because you may have circumstances where you have pieces of the puzzle who aren't there. So to get more and more players ready to play, I think is a real key to the drill at every position, not just on offense. And it's going to be, important at quarterback as well.
On the defensive side of the ball, Coach, people have, during the offseason, loved to talk about, well, the defense should be better. Well, one reason why, you're finally healthy again on that side, aren't you?
Well, we got some guys back that will help. I think the inexperience that we played with last year, we sort of lost the culture of how we play defense. I think there was a lot of uncertainty. Players were not sure all the time. And even when they knew what they do, they had trouble implementing it in the game when things happened quickly. And it led to a lot of mental errors. And, people that play together develop confidence in one another. And I think, when you make a lot of mental errors, you lose that a little bit. So with the maturity of some of the players coming back, I think the front seven will definitely be better. But I think it's going to be really important that some of the young players that we have in the secondary come along, because we did lose 4 out of 5 starters in the secondary and don't have a lot of experience at those positions. But I do feel like we have some very capable players that are just going to have to mature and come along quickly.
It's not just players, staff, so important as well, Coach. And you've got some continuity, and with your coordinators, Steve Sarkisian and Pete Golding on the defensive side, guys you've worked with, guys you know, guys you trust.
Well, I think that this is the first year we've had continuity for the last 3 or 4 years, and it couldn't happen at a better time. I think we've got a really good coaching staff. I think the players really trust and believe in the coaches that we have. I think the players trust and believe in the systems that we have on offense, defense, and special teams. Because Jeff Banks does a great job on special teams as well. He's very experienced. He's a good teacher. And we've been very successful on special teams. Not necessarily the specialists, but the special teams have been great. So we need to improve the performance of our specialists, but I really like our staff. I like our coordinators. I think the continuity and carryover, especially in uncertain times, certainly has helped us with the transition of the things that we need to do to get our team ready.
Coach, let's hear a little more from your coordinators now.
You know, obviously this offseason looked a little different for us, but I just want to commend our players. I think everything that came their way, they adjusted to it. I thought we took the spring from a learning standpoint and the Zoom meetings, and then in the summer having those 10 days, I thought our kids adapted unbelievably well, and their resiliency was really, really good to see. You know, not having a spring ball, I think obviously is a big concern to some people, and they ask, you know, does anything change? And I think with the Zoom meetings we had, where we're at from a mental standpoint with our players, I think we're way ahead from a mental standpoint than we've ever been. And then it's been nice in that summer. It was different, you know, having those 10 days to be able to get with those guys like a mini camp before camp started. So our standards aren't going to change. Our expectations aren't going to change just because we didn't have spring ball. We obviously have a chip on our shoulder. We know the tradition of defense here. We know the expectation here, and we're ready to live up to it.
You know, it's always flattering when people express interest in you, and I had obviously a couple schools that wanted to interview and have those discussions, but at the end of the day, this is a special place. And I came here for stability in my career. I was coming off of my 2-year stint at Alabama. I had already left Coach Saban once in 2016, and I just felt like the timing wasn't right. He's been too good to me. Alabama's been too good to me. I love these players. The administration's been tremendous. So all in all, we've got a lot left to accomplish. For me personally, this just felt like the right thing at the right time. This is where I'm supposed to be right now in my life. I'm with a really good mentor. I learn so much every single day, and it's a joy coaching the players that I get to coach. So all in all, you know, the decision, it's always a little difficult when you have to make a decision to be a head coach or not when you're an assistant. But this one was probably a little easier than others just because of where we are. The University of Alabama is a special place, and we've got great players. It's an awesome administration, tremendous fans, and we've got a chance to be pretty good this year and years to come.
The Nick Saban Show is brought to you by the University of Alabama, where legends are made. And by Red Diamond, the official coffee and tea of the Crimson Tide.
Coach, so many changes and different ways you've had to adapt in these last few weeks and months, but certainly with your schedule to play all SEC teams, which is not all that different from what you've been talking about for quite a while.
Well, because scheduling is so difficult in this day and age, I've been one of the proponents of playing more SEC games. I hate to see it happen in the circumstances that it happened, but it's going to be very challenging for the players, but I think a great opportunity for the players. They're going to play, 10 quality opponents, so they have an excellent opportunity to create value for themselves, and it's going to be more challenging for our team. because you're going to have to play on a much more consistent basis, because you're not going to have those couple, 3 games that you have better players than the other team, and you're going to go out there and get to play a lot of players. So I think managing through the season is going to be an important part of this in terms of how can your team sustain. So we're excited about it. We're excited to play a couple new opponents in the SEC, Missouri and Kentucky, to go with the previous schedule that we already had, and we know it's going to be very challenging.
From a preparation standpoint for your staff, what did the change to the schedule do? What was involved there?
Well, as soon as we found out who the new opponents were, we'd already done summer scouting reports and studies on the teams that we were playing. Obviously, the teams that we were going to play, like USC and some of the others, we'd done work on them, so you could put that in the basket. But we just, went out and did the same work on them because we moved the season back a little bit, and when we could start practicing, we had a little extra time. So we did as much research as possible, and we'll spend some time on fall camp on anything new and different that they do, like we do on all of our opponents.
Stay with us. We're back with more in just a moment right here on The Nick Saban Show.
The Nick Saban Show is brought to you by the University of Alabama, where legends are made. By Coca-Cola, together taste better. And by Aflac. Get to know us at aflac.com.
Coach, we talk often about how things change since you were a player in your coaching career, how different aspects of the game change. Probably nothing more than the approach to strength and conditioning, and you've made a change with how you and your staff and your program are approaching that now.
Well, we really started when the season was over. I felt like the last couple of years, our players didn't sustain the season very well. We had more injuries. So we started a research program actually by bringing some NFL people in to talk about velocity training, some of the individual scientific approaches that they were using for injury prevention, whether it was soft tissue or whatever it might be. And so then when we had an opportunity to bring new blood into the strength and conditioning program, we went out and that's what we were looking for. And while I've been really impressed with, Baloo and Ray are a great team. They're very scientific in their approach. Players really respond well to it. It's all about explosive movements, developing power, velocity training, and a lot of the things that they have done have minimized injuries, in players, which is a huge selling point, for players in your program as well as players that you're recruiting. So this has been a real godsend for us to, have these guys, the new approach that we have and the way the players have bought into it.
We're going to spend some time looking at that new approach with the strength and conditioning staff as we go Mercedes-Benz All Access.
The Nick Saban Show is brought to you by the University of Alabama, where legends are made.
The decision to come to Alabama was one that it was a chance to be around a culture of greatness, a culture of high expectations, in a place to where I strangely felt familiar with, because there was a handful of guys that I coached before at IMG, and I knew their character and I knew their work ethic and I knew what those guys were about. And and in talking to those guys, I knew that was the culture of this program. And so there was a level of comfort in that made it easier to make the transition, and to come down here. And we were just, you feel really good about the chance to come down here and try to add to it, try to add to the program, add to the atmosphere here, and try to do our part to put a successful player development program in, from a strength and conditioning perspective.
Coach Blue and I have never shied away from challenge. And when we first started developing this system 5 years ago, one of our goals was to try to implement this at the highest level. So, our decision to come to Alabama was in part due to that challenge.
Our system as a whole is very power driven. And when I say power driven, you're attacking the nervous system. And to attack the nervous system and to change the nervous system, and specifically in the game of football, there are specific ways you need to do that in the weight room, and you don't know unless you're tracking bar speed or you're tracking explosiveness and with specific numbers, because there's specific numbers that drive a response from the nervous system that others won't. So, and that goes back to my point of why we use the technology and data to do everything that we do. But every single thing we do, and here's the thing, every strength coach that sits down and talks to anyone uses the word explosive, okay? The difference between all of them and what we do is we measure every single thing to truly show where you are on a scale from poor to elite from a power perspective.
I tell our guys all the time, you got to recover as hard as you train. In order to keep your body healthy and refreshed, you've got to put an emphasis on what they're doing from a regeneration standpoint. And so the modalities, the equipment that we've got in that Sports Science Center are key to helping our athletes recover from the day-to-day exertion.
We got together, we're very, we think very similar in terms of the way we want to aggressively pursue from a human performance side of things. And our views align in a lot of things. I trust him. And I think that through our course of, this is the third spot we've worked together now, I think we have both open-mindedly progressed our system to where we're adding on to this thing year by year by year. And that is our thing. We're never gonna rest on our laurels. Every single year we wanna make sure that we're looking at this thing and we're adding another layer to it or taking away things that maybe we need to move. But I think just the lack of ego, and we work side by side, and there's no issue with that. And I trust him, he trusts me, and I know that. And on top of that, you got to surround yourself around a bunch of talented people, and that's what I've tried to do. And I feel fortunate to be able to have a chance to come to work on a day-to-day basis. It was one of the best and premier minds in the human performance on the planet.
Well, I've been in this line of work for 25 years now, and I've never found a strength and conditioning coach that is as interested and as committed to sports science as I am. So when we first connected, it was pretty obvious, straightforward, that not only did our philosophies on using data and capturing data and using it to integrating it into the actual development process, but even just our philosophies on things like pushing athletes to reach their full potential, or how important recovery is. Everything we would discuss meshed and aligned really well.
The Nick Saban Show is brought to you by Aflac. Get to know us at aflac.com.
Coach, all summer long, and really, I guess since back in the spring, it's been, dear Lord, what's next? But thank goodness, right here, we get a chance to talk about what's next, and that's the opener against Missouri.
Well, and I think it's important that the players transition psychologically into, they practiced a long time on their own, they worked out a long time on their own, then we were able to work with them a little bit in the summertime. But during all this time, you were practicing to practice because you really didn't know what you were practicing for. You didn't know if you were going to have a game, we didn't know if we were going to have a season. So to psychologically transition from I'm just practicing to improve to I'm actually practicing because we have a challenge. And that's something that we really have to, invest our time in so that we can go out and perform really well when we do get an opportunity to play. And I don't think people really realize that. It's like you go hit golf balls at the driving range, but you never go play the course. And it's different. I think that's something that we really try to work hard to get our players ready to play this first game.
Always appreciate the time, Coach. Great to have you again. Great to have you with us, and we look forward to seeing you next time right here on the Nick Saban Show.
The Nick Saban Show is brought to you by Coca-Cola. Together tastes better. By the University of Alabama, where legends are made. And by Trustmark. People you trust, advice that works.